The woman sitting across from Daniel Hayes looked almost exactly like the photograph he had been shown that morning. The same dark eyes. The same soft brown hair. The same delicate features. But there was something in her face that the photograph could never capture. The exhaustion of someone who had spent years surviving without anyone noticing. Daniel had expected a glamorous woman chosen by his matchmaking service, someone who would fit comfortably into his billionaire world of penthouses, private schools, charity galas, and expensive vacations. Instead, he found a woman wearing a faded blue coat with frayed cuffs, shoes that had clearly been repaired more than once, and a handbag whose strap was held together by careful stitching. What Daniel didn't know was that she wasn't supposed to be there. Someone had deliberately switched the woman he was meant to meet with her poorer twin sister. And within 10 minutes of sitting across from him, that woman would ask one simple question that would force Daniel to confront a truth he had spent 5 years running from. Before we begin, if you believe that kindness can give people a second chance, please take a moment to like this story, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks. Your support helps us continue telling stories about compassion, courage, and the unexpected moments that change lives. Daniel Hayes had everything money could buy, except the one thing he wanted most. At 38, he was the founder and chief executive of Hayes Meridian Group, a technology and investment empire whose offices occupied several floors of a glass tower in Manhattan. Business magazines called him brilliant. Investors called him fearless. Newspapers described him as one of the city's most eligible bachelors. But every evening, when the elevators opened into his quiet penthouse, Daniel stopped being the billionaire everyone admired and became simply a father trying to help his 8-year-old daughter sleep through the night. His daughter Emma had lost her mother when she was only 3. A sudden illness had taken Daniel's wife within weeks, leaving behind a little girl who still believed that if she kept one of her mother's scarves beneath her pillow, somehow the woman she remembered would return. Daniel had never known how to explain death to a child. He had thrown himself into work, hired the best caregivers money could find, and convinced himself that providing everything Emma needed was the same as being there for her. But children don't measure love by bank accounts. They measure it by who sits beside them when they're afraid. Emma had become quieter as the years passed. She wasn't unhappy exactly, but she seemed to live behind an invisible wall. She avoided birthday parties, disliked crowded rooms, and became nervous whenever strangers asked about her mother. Daniel had tried therapists, tutors, private schools, vacations, horseback riding lessons, art classes, and everything else his wealth could provide. Nothing seemed to reach her. Then one evening, after Emma had fallen asleep on the couch beside him, Daniel made a decision. He would try to build a family again. Not because he needed a wife. Because Emma needed someone who could bring warmth into a home that had become too polished and too quiet. His assistant recommended a private matchmaking agency known for discreet introductions among wealthy families. Daniel agreed reluctantly. The agency presented him with a profile of a woman named Clara Bennett, a 32-year-old interior designer from a respectable family. Her photographs showed a graceful woman with dark hair and gentle brown eyes. Her background seemed compatible with Daniel's world, and the agency assured him that she was intelligent, compassionate, and interested in building a serious relationship. Daniel agreed to one dinner. He arrived at a quiet restaurant overlooking the river 20 minutes early. He had no expectations. He wore a simple charcoal suit and sat near the window, watching boats move through the darkness. Then she walked in. At first, Daniel thought there had been a mistake. She looked exactly like Clara's photograph, yet somehow completely different. Her coat was old. Her hands were slightly red from the cold. She paused near the entrance as if unsure whether she belonged in a place where the smallest plate cost more than a week's groceries. Daniel stood. The woman approached cautiously and gave him her name. It was Clara. But she was not the Clara from the profile. Daniel didn't know it yet, but Clara had a twin sister named Lily. The two sisters had been born only 11 minutes apart, but their lives could not have been more different. Clara had been fortunate. She had married well, built a successful career, and moved into a comfortable neighborhood. Lily had not been so lucky. After their father died, Lily had stayed behind to care for their sick mother. She worked several jobs, gave up college, and eventually became responsible for medical bills that seemed to multiply faster than she could pay them. When their mother died, Lily inherited almost nothing. Clara inherited the family home. The sisters had grown apart. And now Clara had discovered that Daniel Hayes was being introduced to her through the matchmaking agency. She wanted the opportunity. She wanted the billionaire. But she didn't want to admit that she had a twin sister. So she had sent Lily in her place. Lily had resisted. She had said she couldn't do it. Clara had insisted that it was only dinner, that nobody would get hurt, and that Lily owed her for years of help. Lily eventually agreed because she desperately needed money. Her landlord had given her 48 hours to pay the rent. She had less than $20 in her bank account. So she sat across from Daniel Hayes, knowing that every word she spoke was part of a lie. Yet something unexpected happened. Daniel didn't ask about her clothes. He didn't ask why she seemed nervous. He didn't ask about her career. He simply looked at her and asked about Emma. Lily had never met the child. But instead of pretending to know everything, she admitted that she didn't. Daniel found that strangely refreshing. For the first time in years, someone wasn't trying to impress him. They talked. Not about money. Not about business. They talked about loneliness. Lily told him that some people could have a beautiful house and still feel homeless. Daniel quietly admitted that his penthouse often felt like a hotel where nobody stayed long enough to unpack. Then Lily looked directly at him and asked the question that changed everything. She asked, "When was the last time your daughter saw you happy?" Daniel froze. Nobody had ever asked him that. Not his assistant. Not his family. Not the therapists. Not even himself. He looked down at the table. He couldn't remember. Lily didn't know why she had asked. It simply seemed important. Daniel went home that night carrying a feeling he couldn't explain. Emma was awake. She was sitting on the living room floor, arranging colored pencils into perfect rows. Daniel sat beside her. For several minutes he said nothing. Then he asked if she wanted to have breakfast with him the next morning. Emma looked surprised. She asked if he wasn't going to work. Daniel smiled faintly and said he would be late. The next morning, for the first time in months, father and daughter ate breakfast together. Daniel burned the toast. Emma laughed. It was a small laugh. But it was the first genuine laugh Daniel had heard from her in weeks. And something inside him shifted. Over the next several days, Daniel kept thinking about Lily. The woman he believed was Clara. He invited her to meet Emma. Lily panicked. She knew the lie couldn't continue. But before she could tell Daniel the truth, circumstances forced her deeper into the deception. When Lily arrived at Daniel's home, Emma was sitting in the garden drawing pictures. The little girl looked at Lily for several seconds. Then she asked whether Lily liked drawing. Lily smiled and sat beside her. She didn't try to impress Emma. She didn't give her expensive gifts. She simply asked what she was drawing. Emma showed her a picture of 3 people standing beneath a tree. Lily noticed something immediately. There were 3 figures, but one was drawn very faintly. She asked who it was. Emma said it was her mother. Lily's expression softened. She didn't tell Emma that her mother was watching over her from heaven. She didn't offer some polished adult explanation. She simply said that sometimes people remain important even after they leave us. Emma nodded. Then she leaned against Lily's shoulder. Daniel watched from the doorway. For the first time since his wife's death, He saw Emma relax around another woman. He felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Hope. But hope can be dangerous when it's built on a lie. 2 weeks later, Daniel discovered the truth. His security team had performed a routine background verification before Lily was allowed regular access to the house. The report came back with inconsistencies. The woman he knew as Clara was actually Lily Bennett. There was another woman with the exact face from the matchmaking profile. Clara. Daniel felt betrayed. He drove to Lily's apartment that evening. The contrast between their worlds hit him immediately. Her building was old. The hallway lights flickered. The elevator was broken. Her apartment was tiny, with second-hand furniture and a kitchen barely large enough for 2 people. Lily opened the door and saw Daniel standing there. She knew immediately. The truth had arrived. Daniel demanded to know why she had lied. Lily didn't defend herself. She told him everything. She told him about Clara. She told him about the rent. She told him about their mother's illness. She told him how she had spent years putting everyone else first until there was almost nothing left of her own life. Then she said something Daniel didn't expect. She told him she had planned to tell him the truth after the first dinner. But after meeting Emma, she couldn't bring herself to disappear without saying goodbye. Daniel was furious. Yet beneath the anger was something else. Understanding. He looked around the apartment and saw a stack of unpaid bills on the table. He saw an old photograph of Lily with her mother. He saw a refrigerator containing almost nothing. And suddenly he understood that Lily hadn't entered his life because she wanted his money. She had entered because she was desperate. But she had stayed because she cared about his daughter. Daniel left without making a decision. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept remembering Lily's question. When was the last time your daughter saw you happy? He realized that Lily had changed him without asking for anything. She had made him sit beside Emma. She had encouraged him to cook. She had taken Emma to a public library instead of an expensive private event. She had taught him that children didn't need a perfect father. They needed a present one. But there was another problem. Clara had learned that Lily had been discovered. She arrived at Daniel's office the next morning and claimed that Lily had deceived him intentionally. She told Daniel that Lily had always been jealous of her. She said Lily had wanted to steal her chance at a better life. Daniel listened quietly. Then he asked one question. Why had Clara sent her sister? Clara had no answer. Daniel began investigating. What he discovered made his stomach turn. Clara had not simply sent Lily to one dinner. She had planned to use Lily as a temporary substitute, hoping Daniel would become emotionally attached before the truth emerged. She believed that if Lily could make Daniel comfortable, Clara could later step into the relationship and benefit from the connection. But there was one thing Clara hadn't understood. Money could buy access. It couldn't manufacture trust. Daniel ended the arrangement immediately. Then he went back to Lily. But this time, he didn't arrive with anger. He arrived with an apology. Lily refused to accept anything from him. She told him